Morning, everybody. I always find this a very strange and surreal experience. Whilst I've delivered many seminars in my time, delivering my seminars in my slippers is still unusual, even though I've done 2 of those this month. So a little bit about me, just so you know who is talking to you. I am a Suffolk raised girl, although grown in South Africa. So I moved out to South Africa when I was 18, had some amazing experiences out there, and that's really what launched me into the world of marketing. And I had the privilege of working with some brilliant brands, and I've been back in the UK quite some time now, and have been working with B2B, B2C, both agency and client side, and I am passionate about helping businesses to deliver realisable growth strategies. NetExtra I've been with for the last 4 years, and NetExtra has a large impact on the not-for-profit space. So they have a lot of clients that include organisations like the Royal College of Veterinary Surgeons and the Finance and Leasing Association and Celiac UK. So my client base straddles both the commercial and the not-for-profit, which makes it really interesting because there tend to be learnings across both of them. Beth, I'm going to have to do a Boris and say next slide, please. Thank you. So our team at NetExtra basically work together to deliver solutions, digital solutions that help organisations to move forward and connect with their audiences. We use Magento and Squarespace for e-commerce, and we have our own bespoke CMS platform that we've developed specifically for the membership sector's needs. We also have our own app platform, which we've developed on Google's Flutter code base. So that's what we do. We're an award-winning agency. We were delighted to win Suffolk Chamber's e-commerce business of the year last year with Thomas Ridley, and we've also secured Gold Digital Impact Awards and Digital Commerce Association Awards. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of assurance that you're not wasting your time listening to me this morning. Next slide, Beth. So why are we here? We're looking to make a more personal connection. We are looking at how we can use phone, email, website, SMS, app and social media to factor in that engagement strategy. And we're also wanting to look at, is an app a relevant tool for your business? And as Paul kindly said, the best way for us to kind of explore that is to take some live case studies from those of you who are willing to participate, and just to explore a little bit about your business and how potentially there might be a business tool in the shape of an app that might help you to overcome some of the challenges. So if you are willing to talk to us about that, we'll just need a really brief overview of your business and of the challenges you're facing in trying to connect with certain audience segments. So feel free to volunteer in the chat. Don't all volunteer at once. So, making a personal connection. Essentially, we need to be speaking to real people about real things that matter to them where and when they want to talk about it. But where do we start with meaningful engagement? Essentially, meaningful engagement starts and ends with data. So the data that you have, whether it's in a simple format such as a spreadsheet, or whether you have a dedicated CRM platform, that's really the lifeblood of what you can do to promote your business and to engage with your customers and your prospective customers. But how do we do that? We do that by using personalization. Now, for a lot of organizations and people, they seem to think that personalization is just simply inserting a name at the beginning of an email, dear Rebecca. But actually, personalization of a user experience and your engagement can go a lot further. It can also go too far and become slightly creepy. So we want to avoid that. But using the data that you have in your customers, and also making sure that you're collecting the right kind of data on the people that you want to engage with, will help to inform and populate and grow your strategy so that it can provide more meaningful personalized engagement. So what is a mobile engagement strategy? Now, lots of people have different definitions of a mobile engagement strategy, but for me, essentially, it is omni-channel. All the things that you can do on your mobile phone comprise a mobile engagement strategy. So you can make and receive calls, emails, you can look at websites, you can send and receive SMS, you can engage with social media, and you can utilize apps. So we're going to cover all of those 6 areas this morning in brief. So I'm going to try and give you an overview of what each tool is useful for, the reasons and the stats around why we should be looking at using them. And I know that we've got a very broad array of businesses that have dialed in to this webinar today. So not everything I'm going to say is going to apply to every business. So excuse me for that, obviously breaking the first rule of engagement by not being specific to my audience, but because it's such a broad array of businesses, please take what's relevant to you from what I'm talking about, and feel free to discard what's not, but not before really thinking about whether there is anything worth exploring there for you. So why is this strategy important? So mobile has become the #1 interaction vehicle. In terms of internet use, 1/4 of the world's users access internet only on mobile. The current stats cite that people are spending 4 hours a day on mobile, and I suspect that actually that stat is a lot higher if we were actually honest about it. And 50% of all e-commerce transactions go through mobile. Now, why is this important to us as people that are trying to promote and market our businesses? It's because essentially we need between 5 and 20 touch points to result in a sale or a connection that's going to result in a piece of business. So with 61% of the world's population using mobile by 2025, it's just a continually growing channel. And 59% of mobile users say that multi-channel awareness is what contributes to them making a decision to connect. So if we can harness the power of all of these different channels through mobile, it means we have the opportunity to create more frequent and more meaningful interactions, and therefore gain a more engaged audience base. So the vital stats, I'm going to go through a number of vital stats for each different channel. The latest stat is that you have 37 seconds to pitch your business. Now 37 seconds is not a lot, so getting that right is critical. I attended an interesting webinar the other day actually, where the speaker was talking about this very thing and about how to pitch your business, and likened it to, if you can't explain your idea to a 10-year-old or your business to a 10-year-old, you're going to fail in this 37-second pitch window. It needs to be simple, it needs to be succinct, it needs to be something that people can grab hold of the idea of as quickly as possible. So 51% of company owners want a call, not an email. Now, that's a really interesting stat, and obviously over this period it's been somewhat challenging for telesales, with lots of people being decentralized and not working in their offices. So to connect with them has been a challenge, but obviously we are now getting back into the work environment, albeit slowly, and also work environments are now getting on board with adopting systems that can reroute calls to employees' mobiles, thank goodness. So, so it means that telemarketing is now starting to pick up again. And actually, in terms of sales responses, 57% of C-level execs value a call from a rep over an email. So, and 82% of buyers will accept a meeting after a call. So, I want to break down each channel by resource, target, purpose, plan, and message. And we're just going to go over these very briefly. With phone, obviously, the data that you need is phone numbers, and you need a method of delivery. Now, if you don't have internal resource to do that, then there are outsourcing options. And I know that locally in Bury, we have a couple of really good companies. I've worked with Joe at VTM, Versatile Telemarketing, and Laura at Your Telemarketing. So it's worth having conversations with these people if you don't have resource internally, because the return on investment that they can achieve is quite significant. So also in terms of sourcing data, if you don't have it, it is possible to source data that is GDPR compliant, and likewise organisations like those can tell you exactly how to go about it and can help you with that process. Secondly, target. Who are you wanting to communicate with? Who are you actually wanting to phone? It's really important that we get our targeting right in terms of having the most relevant conversations with that person about what we have and why they need it. So make sure that you have a really robust plan around any calling strategy. Be prepared for anything that might be asked on the phone, or be prepared to say, can I get back to you on that? But being prepared encompasses the message of what, when, how, and why. And also it encompasses planning your time as to what you're going to do, when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, and why you're doing it. So into that strategy, messaging is also vitally important. You need to encompass in that conversation adding value. So really consider carefully how you might be able to add value to that person, to that organization, because that's where you get the most traction in a conversation, especially in a cold conversation. So making sure that you've assessed your target and your purpose and your message will help to direct that conversation to adding the most value. Being prepared to disrupt the status quo is a really valid thing, because oftentimes people will have a set idea and a set approach around something, but if you can come up with a strategy around disrupting their thinking and maybe considering them to think again about their approach, then that can often motivate the action, which is what you're essentially trying to engage with them for. So, email stats. Business buyers are more comfortable receiving cold emails. So 80% of them have reported this, and 53% open their emails on mobile first. There's been a 760% increase in revenue from segmented personalized campaigns. So going back to that initial part of my conversation with you around why personalization is important, that's a pretty compelling stat. And for every £1 spent on emails, the general benchmark is that you should see a return of £30 in sales. So let's look at resource target, purpose, plan, and message again for emails. So the data that you need, again, hopefully you've got a database that you can draw upon. It is possible to buy legitimate GDPR verified databases that are for corporate email addresses. Can be a little bit more tricky when they're personal, and obviously there is a lot of work to make sure that you retain GDPR compliance around making sure that your data is opted in and that people are happy for you to continue to communicate with them. Delivery method, there are all sorts of bulk emailing platforms out there, varying in their complexities and their capabilities. So do you have a mass mailing platform? If not, do you want to start looking at something like MailChimp or a similar platform, just for an entry level testing, see how you get on with it. For the bigger businesses, there are platforms that you can integrate into your CRM system to make sure that all of the data that you are generating is getting reported on accurately. So by that I mean you can set up the campaign within your CRM system. You can use dynamic mailing lists within your CRM system to populate an email campaign, and that email campaign will then report back into your CRM system about who's opened your email, who's clicked through to what, and you can also, in most cases, assign a rating. So you can score your pages, score articles that they've clicked through to, so that you can actually see that in your CRM and see which are the hottest prospects in terms of prioritizing your callbacks on that. So if you want to talk more about the intricacies of that, then I'm happy to do so later. So again, who are you going to connect with? Sending out generic campaigns to your entire database is seldom the most effective way of doing it. Wherever possible, campaigning to data segments is the most effective. So segmenting your database can be a bit of a task and a bit of a challenge, but it's one well worth investing in, making sure that you could segment your data by industry, by audience type, so depending on their position within the company, potentially if it's a customer based on previous purchases or buying habits or behaviours, Basically, any kind of attribute that you can think of that is a valid one to communicate with your audience on is worth looking at how you might segment your data. So having a plan around your email campaign, what are you going to do before your email and how will you follow up from it? So we're going to look at that a little bit later on in terms of campaign structures and the various touch points and how you might put that together. Messaging wise, always try and keep your messaging as succinct as possible. Subject lines in emails are really critical to get right. Keeping them succinct is a winner, but making sure that they actually encompass your message is really important, because things that annoy people are clicking through to things that actually don't look anything like they were advertised, or if it's not what it says on the tin, it can be a bit of a disappointment. So looking at websites, the vital stats around websites are that 50% of content downloads generate leads with the highest conversion rates. So when we talk about content being king, not a lot is going to change on that front. Content is still king. I have to confess to having looked at a number of your websites as research for today's presentation in trying to ascertain that I know who I'm speaking to. And I did find a number of you have got websites that don't allow you to update your content with kind of relevant, meaningful information. I would suggest that that might be one of the first things you want to look at, because if you're not providing content such as blog and news articles, it means that your website is quite static and it's not going to be attracting as much attention from search engines. It's not going to be optimized for that. So considering the kind of keywords that you need to be using in your content is what do you want to be found for? What are people likely to be searching online for? What are the terms they're going to be using when they might stumble across your business? That's all really important to weave into your content strategy. Content strategy is a subject for another day, because I could do a whole seminar on that. But so yeah, coming back to our mobile engagement, 69% of mobile users use search to validate. So again, that relates to that SEO factor that I was talking about in terms of making sure that you've got content on your website that is optimized. 59% of shoppers are using mobile. And in terms of performance, website performance is really important to the user experience. If your site doesn't load in under 2 seconds, you're going to lose about half of your audience. So that's one that's really worth bearing in mind and making sure that you get right. So in terms of those areas to focus on for websites, content is critical, as I've kind of already indicated. Performance, again, loading within 2 seconds, again, really critical. But the user experience is something that is really important to analyze and to make sure that you're getting right. Is the user experience intuitive? Is your navigation taking people where they want to go as quickly as possible? And are they able to achieve what they need to achieve in as few clicks as possible? That really means that you need to assess your user journeys. And if you haven't been through a process of kind of creating user personas and user journeys that consider where have people come from to our website, what's led them there, why have they come there, what have they come there to do, and how can we help them to achieve that? That's a really, really worthwhile exercise. So in terms of your website, thinking about who you're going to connect with, in one sense, it's a bit of an open book there, because you can't necessarily make your website visible to a particular person, but at the same time, using these other contributing channels to push people to your website is one factor, but the SEO component is really critical, because for organic discovery, having a website that has those keywords and is optimized for SEO is critical. So lots of people don't know that they can actually track the visitors to their website. Now, this is somewhat different for B2C than it is for B2B. B2B have the advantage of being able to record corporate IP addresses. So there are lots of platforms out there offering lots of different methods and price ratings of achieving this. Lead Forensics and Candy are a couple of them. We use a tool that's built into our CRM system that tracks our website visits and online interactions. which basically means that it creates a list in our CRM of leads and activities for our sales team to follow up on. And that tells us not only what business or organization has visited our website, it also tells us what page they've been on, what content they've interacted with, so that when you do give them a call or you do reach out by email, you know what they're interested in. So it's easy to kind of try and target the right person, even though you might not know who the person was and you know who the organization was. If you can see what they've been looking at, then you can probably get a feel and an indication of what kind of role they play within the business. So we've talked about the fact that people discover your website through search engines, largely looking for verification. But the website is a destination and it needs new attractions, i.e. content. It needs marketing to drive visitors from all the channels that we're talking about today. And it needs an exercise strategy to convert those visitors into engaged users or potentially business prospects. And by that, I mean call to actions are a critical part of that strategy. So even if you don't sell online, having clear buttons that say why a visitor should engage with you is a really important thing to include. In looking through some of your websites, I saw that some of you are achieving that beautifully. Some of them I couldn't find the buttons, so maybe that's something you want to look at. And obviously the messaging of your website, it's really important to make it clear who you are, what you do, but essentially why that person would want to interact with you, and where your service is more a business service, then it's probably worth using testimonial content and recommendations, ratings, but also really harnessing every opportunity you have to cement your position as thought leaders. So make sure that you're investing in that kind of thought leadership content. SMS. 70% of people are happy to receive SMS marketing, but 61% of brands don't have a bulk SMS strategy. Now, there's something slightly wrong about those stats, but it says that there is a big gap there, which really modern marketers are overlooking because they think maybe that SMS is old hat, maybe they think it's a kind of means of yesteryear, but actually it's a very alive and well strategy for connecting with users. So 82% of people open every text they receive, and SMS campaigns can perform 7 times better than email and have a much higher response rate than phone, email, or Facebook. We have a partner within our group called InstaGive, and they run SMS campaigns and strategies for people like Macmillan and Amnesty International, etc., etc. And they achieve phenomenal results through their donation, text to donate platform. But they now also offer bulk SMS services to other businesses and organisations. So if anybody wants to find out a bit more about that, just hit me up afterwards. So SMS, data and delivery, we come back to that again. Do you have mobile numbers? Obviously, in this pandemic period, we've been confronted with lots of people not working from their office, not being available on the office landline number that we've got. Sometimes those are rerouted to mobiles, but oftentimes they don't even have that capability. So being able to obtain a contact's mobile number has never been more important in terms of an engagement strategy. So where you have those and where you have permission to use them, it's worth reaching out through other means to collect more of that kind of data so you can use it moving forwards. I already spoke a little bit about different delivery methods. There are lots of organisations out there, but with a very broad spectrum in pricing. One of our clients just switched over to InstaGive's SMS bulk platform, and it's actually saving them about 50% on their previous bills. So, so yeah, shop around. Make sure that you are targeting your interaction to what you know about the mobile owner. So here we go again. We're really talking about personalization. What data do you have that you can use for that interaction? Segmenting your database into different disciplines or different interests to make sure that that message lands really well, because also with SMS you've got many fewer characters to actually communicate your message in a really succinct way and provoke an action in as little time as possible. It's one of the fastest returning mediums next to app. So it's one to make sure that you are really strategizing around and getting your campaigns right. So SMS can be brilliant not only for marketing but also for client support. So if you've got a client who maybe hasn't interacted with you in say 6 months and it's time for an account review, maybe also they have a product or a service from you that's due for review or update, using text for that can be really beneficial. But make sure you're communicating in a succinct way, a message of mutual benefit, and where appropriate, with a relevant call to action. The other great thing about SMS campaigns is you can build in triggered automated responses, and they can go through various trees and channels to make sure that if you receive response A, then that triggers message B going out, and etc., etc. And so you can build up really complex SMS campaigns going back and forth, which are entirely automated. But that's a really interesting means to explore further. So social media, a lot of businesses had shied away from social media. But if the pandemic's taught us anything, it's taught us that social media is a really vital platform for everybody to engage with. We know that our client base has seen some phenomenal engagement rates over social media, and where they'd previously shied away from it because they were concerned about not being able to police what was being said, I think there's really now a wide acceptance of the fact that an organisation will say what they need to say on social media, and that's what represents the organisation. But any comments and anything from any other party, it's accepted that everybody's entitled to their opinion and everybody's entitled to voice it and view it on social media, but that doesn't necessarily represent the organisation. So, and I think there is also an appetite for greater transparency with organisations and businesses on the interaction front, and people like to see that on social. So 90% of businesses are now using social for content marketing, and they report that social marketing has increased their exposure exponentially. We've definitely seen that with the National Hair and Beauty Federation over this last period. Obviously, they've been supporting a very diverse industry of hair, beauty and barbering professionals. They went from having about 5,500 followers on Facebook to 85,000. And their postings, because they've been posting about getting back to work safely and kind of translating the government's advice into real advice for actionable advice for people in that industry, they've had engagements that have been just through the roof. I've seen they've had like 1,800 likes on posts and 500 odd comments. So that just shows you how social media can really help to move organisations forward. And I'll come back to that case study a little bit later on because there's more to say around that. So 65% of salespeople use social to fill their pipeline. Now, this might not be something that you've considered, or it might be something that you've considered and adopted. Obviously, LinkedIn is a valuable source of information in terms of finding out more about businesses that you might approach. In terms of getting those contact names, right, to avoid the kind of total cold calling strategies, it can be really useful for that. And also, you know, where necessary, you can sometimes guess an email address at a business based on the format that others are using. So reaching out to those people becomes easier. I probably should have said that stuff's kind of not general marketing rules, but we know that all salespeople kind of do that stuff. So yes, so Facebook reaches over 60% of internet users, and 3 million businesses are using Facebook for marketing. Obviously, these platforms are now moving into the remit of social selling, which is also another interesting area to explore, but we don't have enough time to really get into that today. So that's one for another time. So social media. There are brilliant platforms like Hootsuite, which enable you to publish across multiple platforms. That's great for where you're really time poor and you just want to share that message across a number of channels. But it's really important to consider which channels are right for your business and where you're going to find your audience. For the most corporate of businesses, LinkedIn, Twitter are probably the places to be. If there is any kind of aesthetic element to your business, being on Instagram, Pinterest, Facebook, they're all really valid. And there are lots of new burgeoning platforms such as TikTok, where you can get engaged in video content in a short form. And those are growing at a really rapid rate, but it's important to consider your audience. There's actually a piece that I've written on social engagement and audience types on the netextra.net website. So if you're interested in that, I can happily send you a link. Just put a comment in the chat and we can reach out. So considering who you're going to connect with and which channel is going to be appropriate for that, tailoring the right content to the right channel is important, but essentially you need to decide what is that social media activity designed to do. It can fulfill a number of requirements. So those requirements could be as simple as we just want to be more personable as an organization. We just want to connect with people in a way that gives us a face and a name and a personality, and that we just seem more attainable. That's valid. Equally, mixing up messaging to incorporate subtle sales messages, or positioning yourself as thought leaders, or where you share or retweet content from other organizations or associations, that could potentially be a really good affiliation, a good association for your brand, is also really acceptable activity. Largely, just don't abuse it. So your plan needs to include, is your posting part of a campaign promotion? Is it themed? Do you have motivational Mondays, or do you have, you know, rich content that you're pushing out, so you're going to use social to push people back to your website to engage with that content in its longest form? Can you drip feed it over a number of social posts over a period of time to kind of build up people's awareness and interest of this particular product or service? So yeah, considering your campaign really carefully, and what the message needs to be and how it should be adapted across the channels is a really important consideration. So apps, finally, last but not least. So 90% of mobile user time is now spent in app. 58% of people like an app because it remembers them and their past behavior. We are inherently lazy as human beings. We don't really like having to log in, and we definitely don't like having to remember passwords. So apps are brilliant for that, because essentially they can bypass a bunch of that through biometric authentication, and the fact that information is inherently secure by being dedicated to that user's device. 63% of people are more likely to purchase from an app recommendation. Now, I don't know how many of you face the same peril, but I made the fatal mistake in lockdown of downloading the Wayfair app. Yeah, my bank balance has not looked too healthy since then. I'm thinking I should probably delete it from my phone. They are a very smart business that know how to market to their customers, and they use every mobile engagement channel available to them. So they know exactly what I like, they know exactly what I'm interested in, they are clearly tracking it, and they clearly know which buttons to push and how to promote things to me, how to make me offers that I simply can't resist. So there's lots to be learned from organisations like that and what they're doing right. And that probably contributes in large part to the fact that mobile apps are expected to generate 142 billion this year alone. And I'm sure also that Amazon have an extremely large part to play in that. That is another app which unfortunately is rather well worn on my phone. So apps. The first question to ask those of you that do have an app already is it static or dynamic? And by that, what I mean is the content fixed? It is what it is. Or is it dynamic and you have the ability to change that content? The apps that Nextra develop have a content management system whereby you can tailor the content. You can even connect it into the content management system of your existing website. You can connect it in with your CRM system to make sure that all the information is married up and you provide that personalized experience. So having a dynamic app is generally way more valuable than having a static app. Again, the targets are is your app user base segmented? So obviously I've talked about Wayfair, and clearly they segment their user base in granular detail because they have the data in order to do that. So to what extent are you able to do that? And to what extent could you maybe refine your data collection purposes to enable you to do that bit better moving forwards? Can you target your users through your app? That's going to be a lot to do with the data that you have on them and their behavior. And what means of promotion will increase downloads? So obviously, to get people to download your app in the first place, you need to be able to promote it. So promoting it obviously on your website, when you make those calls, when you send out those emails is important, but equally, peer-to-peer recommendation is generally the strongest way of increasing downloads. And how do you do that? Well, ratings on the Apple App Store and the Google Play Store are contributing factors. So make sure that you are encouraging your users to rate your app. And also that helps you to establish what you could do better, because if you're not committed to a program of ongoing investment, releasing new features and functionality, you'll be missing a trick, because that's how you keep users of apps engaged, is releasing these new features and new functionality, because they want to see, oh, okay, I can now do this, I can now do that, or oh, it now does this. So people's curiosity is always a fantastic driver to make sure that you harness. So yeah, what kind of activity is driving sessions, which is the usage? So really, it's all those connected campaign activities through the various channels. And what data can you pull and use to personalize? We've kind of touched on that, automating campaigns and content updates. 51% of users are more likely to use an app where they get rewards. That's not going to be relevant to every business on this webinar today, but for those that it is, it's another kind of trigger that can be used. Obviously, apps also have the added benefit of being able to send push notifications where they're enabled. Push notifications are a really brilliant feature. They cost nothing. In our system, you can trigger them and set them all up in the content management system really easily. It's really important to be judicious about your use of push notifications, because if you abuse them, if you send too many, people will simply opt out and revoke that permission. So make sure that you are using them meaningfully, in a targeted, driven way, and that you're being sparing in your use of them. So I thought we would take a look at how we go about building engagement campaigns. I hope you're all awake out there. I do feel this monologuing thing can go on a little while, and I hate to think I might be boring you to death. So building engagement campaigns, I've put some tables together here that kind of give some thoughts around how we might build a campaign, but this will be available as a PDF after the event. If you'd like to contact Beth and the guys at Suffolk Chambers, they will let me know that you want to receive it and give me permission to email you with that. So I'm going to skip straight forwards into the optimizing campaigns section, because I just want to talk about the journey with a campaign and the various touch points, because after all, what we're talking about today is mobile engagement. So we're talking about those 6 potential touch points that you can have that can contribute to your 5 to 20 touch points that you need to make a conversion. So Beth, I'm doing a bojo. Can we move forward a couple of slides, please? There we go, lovely. So optimizing campaigns. Your campaign can start with a piece of content that is available publicly on your website, that you have optimized for SEO, and AdWords and PPC investment might be behind that. Once you've got that piece of content, creating an email that is targeted to your client database and also to your prospect database about the content of that email will push people back to your website to engage with it. And as I said earlier, that can give you further insight into whether they're interested in that or not, which you can then follow up with a phone call. And following that phone call, you can use that opportunity to gain more data to ask, you know, we'd like to engage with you further. Can we have your mobile number? Have you got our app? And inviting them to connect with you in that way will then grow the touch points and channels that you can engage with them on in future. And also following up from those calls with an email just kind of rounds up the conversation, can point them back to any other relevant content that you've got that might help push them towards the ultimate engagement that you need, which is a commitment, a sale, a meeting, etc., etc. So using those other channels to send priority call to actions moving forwards is going to be a great thing. And obviously, I've also put in that kind of second channel there, alongside sending those emails out, sharing social media posts at the same time will help to drive other users back to the content on your website, and it will also help to reinforce even subliminally for people who are receiving emails and calls, because they might have clicked that they've seen something about that on social media. So it's just really important to make sure that you're using every possible channel at your disposal. So I think this gets real when we start considering user journeys, because up until this point, we've really been talking solely about what we can generate and what we can do as marketeers and as business owners to promote what we do and drive engagement. But the other side of that coin is we need to be considering what our users are doing and how they are engaging with us, because at the end of the day, engagement is a two-way street. It's no good us just sending stuff out. What's important is that they have a means of engaging back with us. So this next slide talks about when a user interacts with us and what that journey might look like. So we might send out a promotional email. So they receive a promotional email, they click through to the website, they might try and use our live chat if they want to inquire, if we've got that facility on our website. And by the way, for those of us that are considering live chat, having that as a manned facility and having resource to do that is really important. Otherwise, it's probably not the best thing to have on your website. There's nothing more frustrating than a live chat that's all bot and no bod, or that just you type infinite amounts of detail into and then you get nowhere with. So then they may call if they aren't getting the response they want on live chat. They may then return to the website to enter some information or find out more, and then the journey goes on. In this case, I've documented a negative experience, which I personally had this weekend. So unfortunately, I received an email from a credit card company, and it was promoting something that I really need, which is a new dishwasher. So believe it or not, I have gone the whole of lockdown, as in since March, without a dishwasher. These hands tell that tale. So I received a promotional email from this credit card company that said they have partnered with an electrical, I see I'm having to avoid using names here, with an electrical goods distributor. They're offering 10% off at the moment. So goody, yay, that's exactly what I need. I clicked through to the website and I found the product that I needed, and I thought, hang on a minute, shopping around, their installation costs a bit higher than, well, it was about £30 higher than others. And also, I've seen this product £100 cheaper elsewhere. So I'm going to use live chat to say, can you do anything about the price? Live chat just failed. It was a Saturday morning, but live chat facility was open, but it was open, but no one was home, clearly. So I used the telephone and I called them to say, what can you do about this? Anyway, the call agent was really not disposed to being amenable on price. And so I just had to make a decision. Okay, all right, I'm just going to go back to the website. I'll use the promo code that was in my email. I'll get 10% off. and I'll get my dishwasher. So went back to the website, put the promo code in, it failed. At that point, I had reached absolute frustration because I'd spent a lot of my time trying to make use of something that was supposed to be beneficial to me, and it turned out to just be a waste of time. So then I sent a somewhat snotty email to the card provider, and I abandoned the transaction at that point. But then what happened was there was no acknowledgement of my email. So that prompted me to then use the app and send them a message that way. So this kind of gives you a demonstration of a user journey which involves some negative experiences, but those negative experiences are still engagement touch points, and they are still providing the other party with the opportunity to turn a negative into a positive and to make that engagement count. But let's move on to a more positive story. I kind of alluded to this earlier. So user journey 2, if you will, Beth. There we go. So in this instance, somebody sees a post on social media. They click through from that post to a website to find out more. They discover that they can download something really helpful by registering. So they provide their details and register. They download the resource. And because they've registered, there's a team at the other end that can respond to that. And there's an automated email that acknowledges the fact that they've registered and that they've downloaded the resource, and can we be of any further assistance? And that team then follows up on that registration by phone and converts them to a customer. Now, as I said earlier, this is another real life situation. So this is from our client, the National Hair and Beauty Federation. And Beth's going to click through to the next slide so that you can see what actually happened. They had 33,000 downloads of their Back to Business guide. That is phenomenal, unprecedented. None of us expected it. It was such an unprecedented demand that it actually took the website offline momentarily because we weren't expecting to need that level of resource behind it and the CRM system. So we were able to respond very quickly and get it all back online. But yeah, they got 33,000 downloads, and of those 33,000 downloads, they got 25,000 new business leads, which is a phenomenal amount for them. So they had about 5,500 members in February. And through what they've been able to do since this post went out, this campaign went live, which is probably a month maximum now, they've been able to convert 33% of the people that they've called to a member. So they've had a 33% increase in membership this year, largely due to this campaign. So that's been a phenomenal outcome for them. And it just shows you a live example of how when you plan and execute for success, and as a whole business, not just as a marketing professional, then you really can achieve some amazing things. The thing about the credit card company that I referred to in the negative story previously is that they weren't aligned. All the points in the business were not aligned. And so that's one thing to make sure that you really have sorted, that you're not just doing brilliant marketing campaigns, but the business is aligned behind those marketing campaigns to make sure that every touch point along the way is going to yield a good result. Okay, so just to round up, we're making a more personal connection, and that requires data, insight, effort, and strategy. A mobile engagement strategy gives you multiple touch points to ensure greater success of multi-dimensional campaigns. And as good as your strategy is, if all the pieces don't work together, you will fail. It takes a whole business approach to succeed.